So we have ourselves a new patch, and that's kind of fun. You know, it's a new patch. It's actually got a little bit of meat on the bones for this one. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So we look at this new patch. First thing they want to tell us about for our Season 3 Overwatch patch here is that, yeah, the tanks are going to have their thing where in non-roll queue type modes, they're going to have some of their health pools nerfed. That's the first real thing we're getting into here. Doesn't really matter a ton on that. It's going to mean the tanks actually are different in terms of their power levels individually, like compared to each other in the different modes, because you're in situations where some of the tanks have more of their sustain tied to their health pools, which are what is getting nerfed for these changes, whereas others have more tied to their defensive cooldowns. But hey, you know what? I'm not terribly worried because those aren't really the seriously competitive modes. So we're more interested in what changes are happening for the real stuff. And let's get into it. So we see this, no real change to D.Va here. That's going to cause a little bit of a when we see Reinhardt's changes, but whatever. Doomfist, we're looking at that. No real changes here. Fine. And then we're going to look at Junker Queen. Junker Queen actually has had her regular health increased by 25. So she's now going to have 450 health. That's going to be annoying to people lower on the ladder where she's a tank with really the smallest hitbox and is a bit tricky for people who can't aim at, silver, bronze, that sort of thing to hit. So she's probably going to see some increase in value in some of those lower games there. Mostly their buffs to Junker Queen have been pretty ineffective. I expect this is going to be pretty much the same way for mid-levels and higher on the ladder. I don't think we're going to see her come into the pro meta off of this. Orisa, this is just weird to me. They've gone ahead, these health changes aren't real. They've gone ahead and reverted the buff to her fall-off range. So previously they told us that, hey, we're having technical issues nerfing Hog the way that we want, so we're going to buff some of the people that help check Hog, like Orisa, and one of the buffs Orisa got was her fall-off range. So she could shoot further before her damage got reduced. Well, they've since reverted that, which makes sense because they've nerfed Hog quite heavily. So it sort of makes sense to revert that, except they'd already nerfed Orisa by dropping her Fortify health. So now she's just not going to be good. Like, I guess maybe we're just trying to bring... I think what's actually going on here is they're trying to bring different Brawl heroes into play, and Orisa was a Brawl competitor with Junker Queen and Reinhardt, and as we see here, if Orisa gets nerfed a bit further, we see Junker Queen gets a little bit of a buff, and Reinhardt's going to get some buffs. I think they're trying to flavor of the month our Brawl tank because they don't know how to make the tanks different enough, and we may be seeing more of this going forward where they sort of flavor of the month patch stuff to get Orisa out of flavor as the Brawl tank. But we'll have to see if that is a trend that continues here. So then we move on here. Ramatra. The changes that we see to Ramatra, once again, maybe making him a little less flavorful as the Brawl tank. I don't know how much difference this is going to make. I actually think Ramatra is basically unmoved by this in professional play. This will matter more on ladder. But what we're seeing here is damaging enemies with the ultimate now slows the duration of the timer, so he runs out of his ult more slowly if he's hurting people with his ult, rather than it just pausing completely and him potentially having infinite ult until they win the team fight or until people manage to get away to the other side of the continent to stay away from him. So this is going to mean he gets less duration. If you can stay away from him a bit, his ult may drain out meaningfully there. It is going to have a maximum duration of 20 seconds, so that gives us a feel for what this does, because they didn't tell us the speed at which, the drain is reduced by it. But we can see, okay, if it's a 20-second maximum, that must mean that if he had someone in it for the entire time, it would go for 20 seconds. That gives us a ballpark of feeling what it should be like. So, okay, you look at that and say, hey, it's still a really powerful ult. Little more counterplay if you get away from it. It's going to feel a little more fair conceptually. I think in practice, it's really not going to actually feel that much better, and I don't think this is that meaningful of a change. Sorry, ultimate cost increased by 12%. That does matter a little bit more, especially because ults take they don't take that long, but they do take longer in general in Overwatch 2 to get than Overwatch 1. A lot of that is tanks feeding less ult charge, and that means increasing it by 12% is a bigger increase than it would have been. Like, that's going to be more significant than it would have been in Overwatch 1, because we're slowing down an already slower number in that sense. So this may nerf Ramatra a little bit. I don't think this matters. I think Ramatra is taking a much smaller nerf here than, say, Orisa is on her fusion driver. Um, this is probably similar in value to the 25 health that Junker Queen is getting. Okay, so then we look at this, and Ramatra will still be a better tank than Junker Queen. No question. Reinhardt is where it gets a little bit more interesting to me. We, again, don't care about these health things. They're not real for our purposes. Cooldown on charge reduced from 8 to 7 seconds. And if we were talking, the uncontrollable charge, that would sort of be like, it's something. You don't use charge that often, except for getting back, occasional outplay, etc. Having it available would basically mostly just be helping your return times a little bit. With the version of charge we have, it's very controllable. It's basically like a Winston leap. You can use it to get around the fight. That's a noticeable buff. And then to go with this noticeable buff, we're going to have the damage increase from 90 to 100 on Fire Strike. And this is big. This hits a few breakpoints. The most obvious breakpoint that this now hits, of course, is, because he's still got his 2 charges, is BAP windows. So now, when BAP drops a window and you go Fire Strike, because you can send 2 Fire Strikes, he has 2 charges in Overwatch 2, each of those are lethal to 200 HP squishies, and that makes BAP look better, that makes Reinhardt better, even if it's not going through windows. That extra 10 damage is going to hit a lot of breakpoints that people aren't expecting for combining with damage to be, hey, this is a lot better. I actually really think, hey, they're looking to make Reinhardt the brawl tank of choice, and this may put Reinhardt back in play as not just a good answer, but the answer in the tanking role. We shall see. So what else are we getting out of that? Well, the direct hit damage from Earth Shatter, the meme Earth Shatter that you just kill people when you hit them directly with the Shatter, that's sort of going away, and that its damage is being dropped to 170. I do ask, if that meme is going away, why does D.Va still have remech meme kills? Like, what's our plan here? Those were both bad jokes. Why are we keeping this? Why are we keeping Divas but sort of reducing Reinhardt's? But you're actually getting back quite a bit more for that. Your knockdown duration is increasing from 2.5 to 2.75 seconds, and that will be noticeable. People being laid down on their back, flattened for 2.75 seconds for an extra quarter seconds, you will feel that. Certain heroes absolutely will be able to get an extra shot of damage in, an extra left click of damage in because of that. Reinhardt will probably be able to combo it. Maybe Reinhardt will be able to get his second Fire Strike off more reliably as people are getting up, and that's 20 more damage because we've had, 2 Fire Strikes, etc. This looks pretty good. Yes, we have had the ult cost increase, so maybe we're seeing a trend of trying to make ults less frequent still. But we do look at this and we can see, oh, hey, I'm okay with this trade. If you're going, hey, 7% more ult cost, it takes 7% more to get your ult, but your charge got reduced by a second, you got 10 more damage on each of your Fire Strikes, your duration of your stun went up by a quarter second. Reinhardt's looking to be in pretty good shape with this, and I would want to experiment with Reinhardt. I definitely think he'll be a pretty solid pick on ladder. Okay, so then we move back, Rocket Hammer, knockback reduced. I still don't really care. Like, we're looking at that, that's the sort of, so you're going to knock people a little bit back less with your hammer. I don't care. That sort of makes it easier to stick to them. Roadhog, here we go. Base health, no real changes on that. Roadhog does see some buffs, though. Yes, he has his ultimate cost increase. We're seeing that sort of, not across the board with tanks, but we're noticing our tanks, quite a few of them have picked this up. We're also getting maximum duration increased from 6 to 8 seconds. Whole Hog is no longer a battle. Like, Whole Hog, you can interrupt Whole Hog to throw a hook, you can interrupt Whole Hog to take a breather, and then have it continue, and doing breather isn't going to just take away half of your Whole Hog anymore by locking you out of it, because you now have 8 seconds of Whole Hog. Because it's this sort of ult, a single thing, like sleeping Roadhog and then waking him up, he can go back to doing it with how his ult works now. Whole Hog is no longer a particularly bad ult, especially with this 2-second duration increase here. That's pretty darn solid, honestly. So it's not going to matter because Roadhog's neutral game has just been nerfed so hard, and it's not like Whole Hog is a Overwatch 1 EMP level ult, for example. But this ult isn't what's holding him back. It's how much his neutral game has been gutted. And that's probably for the good of the game, but I doubt he'll stay that way. I suspect we're entering more flavor of the month territory where they'll let him be bad for a bit and then they'll make him good again in the future. But maybe not. Regardless, I wouldn't really feel Roadhogs because that means you're having to bring a Roadhog to get this good whole hog. Okay. Sigma, ult cost increased. We can see they're making ults harder to get for tanks here at least. We can see Winston. This I don't like. Health reduced on his barrier projector from 700 to 650. Who exactly was complaining about Winston in the last patch? Or what testing did you go through that when you nerfed the characters and buffed the characters in the other ways in this patch, you went, oh, we have to reduce Winston's health barrier because otherwise he just takes over? I don't believe you. I legit don't believe you. I have no idea what led to this information conclusion that Winston's barrier health had to be reduced by 50. Yes, I am a fan of Winston, but like Winston has not been particularly meta on the last patch. Yes, playable, but not particularly meta. Before that, sure, he was meta, but no one was really complaining about that, I'll point out. No one serious was really complaining about that at really any level of the ladder or professional play. So this is weird to me. I don't think that these other nerfs looking at the tanks were going to cause Winston to be played a bunch and be better than the other tanks if you didn't do this. Again, I'm looking at Reinhardt, pretty solid buffs right here. I'm not really worried about the nerfs that happened to Ramatra. Arissa's out, don't get me wrong, but Ramatra, Reinhardt, both still looking like solid options. Seems kind of weird to me. Sigma, not really reduced. Yes, slightly reduced compared to some of the others because not every tank took an ult charge loss here. But Sigma and Ramatra have been going well. Reinhardt looks good. This is just kind of weird to me. Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball is an interesting one because we're seeing that as people are getting a little better with sort of the highly mobile comps, Wrecking Ball's finding a spot again at some of the higher levels, but he just feels awful for 99% of players and games. Wrecking Ball feels awful. So do you nerf him? Do you buff him? Well, people are starting to put him together at higher level, not top organized play, but like high tier 3, collegiate, low tier 2, that sort of stuff is seeing some success with him. So what do you do? Well, we've got, the roll Q stuff or the non-roll Q stuff. We've got shield health increased from 0 to 150, right. So that's a lot of survivability that we've just added. We've added 150 health points of that, and I do worry that that's going to make him really, really good. Obviously that's hey, we don't have to worry about healing as much. We don't have to, if you don't have your Harmony Orb, if you don't have Kiriko just paying attention to Wrecking Ball, he can recover some of that health because it's shield health now. And that is a big deal that he particularly doesn't have to wander as far to go get health packs all the time. You're still going to want to get health packs a lot of the time. But that is quite interesting. And in roll Q modes, it's reduced from 600 to 450. So, it's the same total durability that we're looking at, but some of it is recoverable. I don't actually think that's that big a buff. We've taken away 150, given it back in this. Is the shield health under the armor? If the shield health is under armor, that can be a little good, but it won't be. It never is. Yeah, I look at this. This helps Wrecking Ball, but I don't think it helps Wrecking Ball that much. I'll certainly experiment with it. I'm not too worried about him running wild with this based on what I'm seeing here. Obviously, if you put shields under armor, or if you put, you're depending on how they're doing their shield versus armor interactions. We've had times in Overwatch's history where that's been absolutely broken. It could break him, but assuming that they don't just mess that up with their coding, this I sort of look at and go, yeah, that's fine. It's a very minor buff. Because he always had the speed. Shield health to recover would be much more useful on a Pharah or a Cassidy than it is on a Wrecking Ball who really can go pick up health packs very quickly. And the thought is, oh, well, now you don't have to go pick up the health packs because the problem with Wrecking Ball is you range too far from the fight to get your health pack and there's no off tank to hold down the fort for a second. But you can't spend the amount of time that matters for shield health to come back. If you spend the amount of time that it matters for shield health to start to recover, you've had time to go get a health back and come back. Like, that's already too long for you to be missing from the fight, and that is the Overwatch 2 problem with him. Cooldown on pile drive reduced from 10 to 8 seconds. Yes, that is quite the buff. Ultimate cost increased by 9%. They're all getting that. And arming time reduced from 1.5 to 1 seconds. So he's definitely got buffs here. This is the biggest of them. This is the second biggest of them. This shouldn't matter this much unless they've done their coding. But he would definitely be in the tanks that I would be looking at if at organized and higher level play. I don't think this is going to matter that much for ladder. I really don't think the shield health matters that much. I think these are more interesting, and I think you need specific comps for Wrecking Ball to be viable. Specifically, you need specific teammates for Wrecking Ball to be viable, and you won't expect to get those in ladder right now. So, very interested in where this goes. Shield health is above the armor, right, but okay, so that's... Thank you for reporting that, Semitic. So depending on how they've coded it, because even though that in the past has meant, okay, well now your shields get the damage reduction of armor, if it still means that, that will be very good for Wrecking Ball. Very good for Wrecking Ball because it actually means that you're getting to keep your armor for significantly longer. If your shields are getting the damage reduction from armor because the shields are above the armor, you are now in a place where instead of having, say, 100 health that is armored health, you are now going to have, I think that's how much he had, I don't remember, you're now going to be in a situation where you have 250 health that is effectively armored health, and the top 100 of it, or the top 150 of it, auto recovers to make this very sticky health between being armored and shielded. So that could be very good. This could make him a menace, and I will be quite happy if it does. Sorry, but I will be. If they've coded it that way. If they've coded it where only the armor health, only the health here has the damage reduction, and the 150 health on top of it does not have the damage reduction until you get through to this health, then I'm back to this not being very much at all. But Wrecking Ball would definitely be on my tanks to watch. My tanks to watch, continue to keep an eye on Ramatra. I don't think he's really been meaningfully nerfed. Reinhardt, I like those changes. They make him look pretty good. And Wrecking Ball might be a flat-out menace. Or might be perfectly fine. With the health like this on ladder, you'd need to be worried about him as a menace too, if they've coded the health that way. Okay. But we do see later, spoilers, there's some Sombra buff, so maybe you don't want to pick Wrecking Ball. Maybe that's going to control him. But 2 second round action on pile drive, that lets him come in a lot more often. That helps with some of his Overwatch 2 issues, because again, you can go in more often. This just makes his ult better. Okay. So then we get on to Zarya. Okay, ultimate cost increase. So our tanks are just going to have more expensive ults. That's just life. No big deal. Cassidy, movement and combat roll no longer blocked by enemy player collision. That doesn't matter. Primary fire fall off increased from 20 to 25 meters. McSnipes is starting to creep his way back in here. I actually don't think this is a huge deal either. Cassidy just isn't that good of a hero, guys. Not in Overwatch 2. Sorry. Too much of that space has been infiltrated by more players filling out the Hitscan roster since the days of McSnipes, and he's also not like the close range counter that he used to be. He used to be like I would very much appreciate it if my headphone would consistently give me warning before it wanted to turn off. Sorry about that. But yeah, Cassidy isn't the threat that he used to be because he's just not the close range dominating force that now also with this buff He is very threatening at long range and, still loses to snipers like Widow, but not by very much. And hey, if you're worth 90 points at close range and you're worth 70 points at long range, hey, that's still a fantastic hero. He's really not this anymore. He might be back up to 70 points at longer ranges with this, but he's down at like, okay, maybe 80 and 60 or whatever we want to call this in terms of our balance. I don't find this that big a deal. It probably helps him. I still don't think he's going to be a great hero. Okay. Concussion Mine, maximum damage reduced from 120 to 100. That is a big Junkrat nerf. That is a big, big Junkrat nerf. I know a lot of people have been asking for that. It probably made sense for Junkrat to get a pretty meaningful nerf, given that they buffed him going into Overwatch 2 to make up for his trap, his trap getting nerfed, but then they reverted the nerf on his trap. So it probably made sense. Junkrat was being a little too effective in too many situations. At too high a level, to be perfectly honest. So I'm kind of happy to see this one. Ultimate cost reduced. Okay, so as our tanks are getting their ults to be more expensive, our DPS are getting their ults to be cheaper, as we can see here. So they want that to be a little bit of the DPS identity if they get more ults. And I'm okay with that. That could be an interesting direction to go. I don't think these are big enough swings. If that's sort of a identity difference that you want to make between the roles, which would be totally fine with me. But I think we need to see more, but I get why you wouldn't do a huge big swing all at once. Okay. Ultimate cost reduced by 5%. Yep, makes sense to me. Ultimate cost reduced by 5%. Ultimate cost reduced by 8%. Fine. Barrage, Blossom, Blizzard. Why did they pick those ones specifically? Who knows? Okay. Then we get into Soldier 76. Number of shots to reach maximum recoil increased from 4 to 6. Little easier to recoil reduced by 12%. This will make Soldier better. Are they trying to force a hit scan meta? We had Cassidy range buff. We have Soldier with easier to control recoil. Or are they just trying to make more competition with Sojourn? They're probably trying to make more competition with Sojourn. Then we get to Sombra, yet another hit scan, so we really are talking about our hit scan here. And specifically, we were talking about, you'll notice our ult cost reductions went to our Flex DPS, and Flex DPS would have mostly, through Overwatch's history, been thought of as the DPS that have the better ults, whereas your hit scan have sort of the stronger non-ult, stronger neutral fight value. So they might be leaning into that a little bit, which I could be good with. Make their identity more about their ults on the Mays, the Phares, the Reapers. Yes, I know Reapers technically hit scan and how his weapon works, but he gets played by Flex DPS a lot for a reason. Okay. Sombra, damage per projectile increased from 7 to 7.5. Health pack hack duration increased from 30 to 45. I'm good with this one, honestly. It just was a little like meh for Sombra to have 30-second duration on health pack hacks. It just felt barely even worth it, and that is part of her identity. I'm sorry, but it is. Damage per projectile increased from 7 to 7.5. I know she's bad, but like, people don't like it when she's good. And if you're going to have her good, I really like her being good more through health back stuff. I'm still totally in favor of give us back Sombra 1.0, move her to the support category, and have, her hacked health backs give ult charge. I know that's never coming back, but I'm still good with that, and I think that would be more fun to play against than let's increase Sombra's damage. Let's have her be a lockdown character and increase her damage so that she can start killing you faster and faster while you're locked down. No one likes that. No one likes playing into that. It's not good for the game for an invisible character to work in that archetype. Whatever. This is fine. I don't expect her to run around overpowered with this. I don't think she's going to see that like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I think she may return to a place of, hey, you're running. I mean, we have a strong Wrecking Ball and Tracer's in play, we may return to even a ball type meta of Wrecking Ball plus Tracer, and then you have like a Sombra or an Echo or a Soldier or a Sojourn, something flexible in that last slot there, and she could be it when you feel like you need more dive power. We shall see. Photon Barrier, ultimate cost increased. This sort of makes sense to me, even though our DPS ults were trending in the other direction, and that's because this ult is just so powerful. This ult is really more of a support ult, and support ults tend to be more powerful than tank ults. Support ults tend to be the most powerful ults, tank ults tend to be the next most powerful ults, DPS ults tend to be the weakest ults, and Symmetra is a DPS hero with a support ult, really. Like, that's just like EMP is, not a DPS ult. So I'm good with this. Totally fine with me. Uh, is she now in a place where she's too weak? Maybe, but maybe. I think we're seeing some flavor of the month balancing. Torb has his turret health reduced. That's fine. Widowmaker has her base health reduced from 200 to 175, and this is probably appropriate. She's been quietly sitting back there, just going, okay, if Soldier isn't OP, she's going to be OP. She's just less OP than the first beta Soldier was. Oh, so first beta Soldier got nerfed, but Sojourn got buffed back up to take the spot. If Sojourn gets nerfed, Widow will take over in that slot and still be better than most of the cast. And apparently Blizzard sees that and has brought her health back down to 175. I think that's appropriate. I think that's totally fine. Could you compensate her with a little more power somewhere else? You could. It's hard to figure out exactly what that would be. More ammo in her clip, 1 second off either one of her cooldowns, maybe, but I'm perfectly fine with this being the case, especially since Tracer doesn't do as much damage, since Sombra hasn't been very good for a lot of Overwatch 2, and that makes controlling her, since Wrecking Ball previously wasn't terribly good. It's harder to go punish 200 health Widows. It's, wildly harder. Bringing her back down to 175 when we have a weaker Sombra than Overwatch 1, when we have a weaker Tracer than Overwatch 1, when Ball has historically struggled in Overwatch 2, this makes some sense to me, because those were your good checks to Widow. Don't fix Sojourn by buffing more Hitscan. I know, Semitic. I know. I tend to agree. They're trying to go, hey, let's fix her competition to make them at her level. I do also think that's the wrong approach. I'm not really worried about the Cassidy buff here. I don't think McSnipes is a real concern, given how much weaker his Sticky Bomb is compared to Flashbang. And I also look at this and say, Soldiers worries me a little bit more, controlling his recoil, better sort of stuff. Some of the, hey, let's buff this, hey, oh, and then let's do this. Like, I'm less a fan of that, but we'll get there. We hope. Now we move on to our support. So we see pretty much universally this was for our flex DPS spots, it was ult reduction. For our hit scan DPS, we were in situations where they mostly tried to buff them, and Sojourn was untouched. Sojourn, who many people would still very much consider a problem, is untouched in this patch. So they're trying to bring other DPS to her level, maybe? I don't know. Okay. Symmetra, Torb, we talked about. Now we're into our supports. This is just weird to me. Biotic Grenade, effect duration reduced from 4 to 3.5. Why? Was Anna absolutely taking over your games? She wasn't taking over mine. She's good, don't get me wrong, but, I still preferred Kiriko Lucio basically every time I could get it. Did it bother me if Anna slipped in, either in organized play or in ladder play? No. I could live with them. They weren't a significantly worse choice than those other options, but Anna was not the top option, and I really don't feel like the grenade is what I want to attack on her anyway. In fact, I'd almost prefer to restore the size of her grenade, to be perfectly honest. So, not a fan of this one. 4 seconds feels really bad for tanks. It does. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to deny that, but it's also smaller than it used to be. And didn't we have a window where it was 3 and that was just terrible? Did we go from 4 originally down to 3, back up to 4, and now we're doing 3.5? Is that what happened? Because I swear we had a window where it was 3. Regardless, I look at this and say, fine, you can do 3.5 seconds if you want. It's not the worst thing in the world, but she's not the support that's riding super, super high right now. She's a reasonable option. So I look at it and more go, are we keeping an eye on Kiriko? What are we doing? Okay. And you know, she's in a place where Kiriko's nade does still cleanse her, so not great, and it's on a shorter cooldown. Brig gets interesting here. Healing over time reduced from 55 to 50 per second. That matters, but it's not huge, and it's net a buff because applying Repair Pack now instantly heals 25 health on impact. That's a pretty big buff. I don't think it fixes her fundamental problem. I really don't. Of Lucio is just better than her at supporting grouped targets, supporting brawl, peeling, etc. Lucio is just the better hero. This gives her a little bit more ability to project power and that she instantly restores that 25. And hey, that does help. That'll especially feel good for players who are a bit lower on the ladder. It's probably going to encourage people to spam packs a bit more because they're trying to get that, oh, I get my 25 health and then I get my another 25 health by spamming packs, which isn't good. I don't think that's good to train people to do. I don't think that's generally a good way to use her packs. It historically has been a terrible way to use her packs in like 90% of situations. But I look at this and say it's definitely a buff. Like, I will not deny that that's a buff, but I do think we're in a situation where unless you're bringing her and Lucio, Lucio is mostly just better than her. Got a couple caveat exceptions for like, no, we're bringing Brig plus Zarya, so now we have so much power that we can project into different lanes while staying in our own brawl lane. So little bit of an exception for that, but mostly I still look at this and go, it's not interesting enough, it's not making her different enough to give you cause to go, well, let me bring her for this reason. Rally, ultimate cost reduced, sure. She's net buffed. Don't get me wrong. This is a net buff and it's a meaningful net buff. It just doesn't matter to me unless she has a more unique niche or we're doing flavor of the month balancing. And if we're doing flavor of the month balancing, you're gonna need to nerf Lucio because this isn't enough to put her above Lucio for the role that she's competing for. And we are nerfing Lucio, but we're not nerfing Lucio. We are buffing Lucio. Ultimate cost reduced by 7%. Then Lucio's still better. Even if this was the other direction, Lucio would still be better. But this will probably help a lot. I think we're going to be surprised. I think at the top level with the really, really good Lucios, and you don't necessarily see these until like very high contenders or Owl, we're going to be like, whoa, sound barriers are coming really fast. Whoa, there's never a window to use like overclock because sound barrier is just always available because the good Lucios who really hit their shots, who are getting that spam in, have consistently charged this at a pace that most people almost don't believe if they're not, if they are playing even at like masters level, low GM level, the difference in how much Lucios ramp up their pace for charging ults. So 7% reduction could be pretty big for Lucio at the top. For everywhere else, it's just going to feel like, oh, Lucio gets his ult at a reasonable pace as opposed to being massively behind the Grav or whatever that he's trying to counter, or the overclock or whatever. Mercy, cooldown increased from 1.5 to 2.5 seconds, so you would think that would dumpster her, and it probably will, because their compensation for her is this other thing. So she's got the cooldown increase from 1.5 to 2.5 seconds on Guardian Angel, holding the backwards directional input, canceling with the jump ability, now moves 20% slower. I don't really care. Healing per second reduced from 55 to 45. That is terrible. Healing is increased 50% for allies under half health. Are you trying to push people more towards damage boost, like heal people when they're low, but then switch to damage boost when they get over half health? If that's what they're trying to do, if they're trying to teach people to play Mercy more correctly, I can sort of get behind it, but you're dumpstering this hero. You really are. And part of what you're dumpstering here, healing is increased 50% for allies under half health. Oh yeah, so now she's gonna heal for, now she's gonna heal. Still not enough. Like, yes, it's more healing, but it's not more healing than you would get from an Ana pocketing someone, a Moira pocketing someone. Yes, you can have Mercy plus a more direct, bigger healer healing someone, so it'll be like an annoying amount of health to get through. But when you combine this with Guardian Angel cooldown going up, base healing for when you're topping people off, slowing down, decreasing, and then she's supposed to be getting it back in the form of now healing other people, heals you for 25% of what you were healing them while getting rid of her regeneration passive. Now she's still going to self-heal because all supports have the self-heal passive, but her self-heal passive was a little bit more powerful, and don't get me wrong, if it was just a straight trade of she's losing the little bit on top of her self-heal passive, and instead getting she heals herself for 25% of the healing done, that would be a buff and a noticeable one in some situations. Not perfect because you can't always heal on demand. There isn't always healing to do. But a buff. But when you try to be like, hey, you're getting this as your survivability trade for this, terrible deal. Absolutely terrible deal. And don't get me wrong, I see the synergy of, oh, you're supposed to heal people up to half and then damage boost them. And part of doing that will leave them with some health for you to heal. So if you get attacked, you can heal them and get this. Like, I see the synergy there. I see the synergy with her blue beam. Don't get me wrong. This is still a terrible thing. The Mercy Mains are probably in absolutely a rage over this one, and honestly, they're right. They're right this time. They should be in a rage over this one. This is not good at all. So maybe there's our Sojourn nerf. We've nerfed Mercy to the point at which why you justify running Mercy? No, you cannot. Okay. Okay. So we move on here. Uh, Coalescence, ultimate cost reduced by 5%. Honestly, we could make this like Moira's identity used to be getting fast ults. We could easily make this 12%, and I wouldn't blink an eye. Moira would actually be better competition with like a Kiriko if you just made this 12%. Like, oh, you have a purpose again, you exist, blah 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 blah, but whatever. We move on. Zenyatta Orb of Destruction ammo increased because they don't want to give him more survivability, so they're letting him have less reloads. This will matter. This makes Zen more attractive. It really does. I'm good with this. So overall, I look at this. Things that definitely catch my eye would be, hey, Sojourn did not get nerfed. Kiriko did not get nerfed. These two heroes not getting nerfed catches my eye and is something I'm aware of. You can even add Ramatra in here. We can pretend that Ramatra got nerfed. Ramatra did not really get a nerf that matters. So these three heroes who are pretty meta heroes, not taking nerfs, both on ladder and in organized play, these are pretty meta heroes, and none of them took nerfs. Do I think these heroes were absolute bonkers, busted, broken, and absolutely needed to be nerfed? Not necessarily, but I think people were looking for the meta to shake up a bit. Things had gotten pretty stale, and the promise of, Overwatch 2 was faster patching, faster this, and the patching actually has to change things for a faster patching promise to matter. So I get a little bit worried about this, about the fact that, three of our meta heroes are basically in places where they weren't really touched. However, I am much more interested in some of the things I'm seeing with, hey, our tank area does look more interesting to me. Ramatra is still part of it, so we've got to be aware of that. Ball might be outright busted right now, and I like what I'm seeing on Reinhardt. So I look at that and go, these heroes weren't seeing a ton of play. Ball was seeing some. In only in organized play, not on ladder. But these now all look interesting for both styles of play, and those are different things, and that could force Ramatra out of the meta just because something else becomes more powerful, better to go with it, etc. Maybe we have a return of Rhine Bap. So I look at this and go, okay, I like what we've seen in terms of our tank shakeup here, even if it does suggest to me that we're going for flavor of the month balancing rather than balanced balancing. That's just a return to Blizzard as far as I'm concerned. And if they want to go this live service game route, that's probably what they're going to do. I have my complaints with that, but at this point, sure, why not? I think it's a good change to nerf your tanks, even if they haven't done it evenly for non-role queue stuff. That's going to make it for people who are trying to do the battle pass thing, which is good for Blizzard's financial future that they are. It will, and need their arcade wins. I think that'll help. So hey, I have no idea why that's turning off when clearly I'm talking into it, but whatever. Okay. So I think that's a good change too. Then we can look at some of the stuff where, hey, tanks, we're slowing down when tanks get their ults. We're speeding up when most DPS, especially flex DPS, get their ults. That's interesting to me. I'm actually fine with both of those as an identity thing. I don't think these are very big identity shifts, but it's the beginning of something, and you couldn't make them huge swings right now without nerfing or buffing other parts of those heroes' kits. Like if you're going to go, hey, we're going to actually give the flex DPS like Mei their ult 20% faster, and we're going to give the tanks their ults 15% slower, well, you would have to buff other parts of the tanks. You'd have to nerf other parts of each of the individual heroes. And so you can't necessarily do that in one swing because it's just too big. So I'm okay if this is an identity direction that they're going. That's kind of interesting. I'm less a fan of let's just sort of buff our hit scan to get them all in line with Sojourn. We can just nerf Sojourn. Like that's not a big deal. Just nerf Sojourn. Um, I can live with 3.5, I guess. I can live with that. I don't think Anna was the right person to nerf, but whatever. Briggs change. Again, I think they're going with flavor of the month direction stuff here, and it just doesn't matter because Lucio is still better. Lucio is still better. Sorry. Unless we're doubling up on them. And we could double up on them. But I don't think we're going to double up on them with the tank possibilities that I'm seeing right now. It's possible that you would see a Reinhardt Lucio Brig meta form because Lucio got a pretty nice ult cost reduction. Brig did get buffs. We did see a Lucio Brig meta happen before with Junker Queen when you had Junker Queen's shout to go with them as sort of a third aura thing. Reinhardt in Junker Queen's place. Stronger Reinhardt could work. We also have a stronger Junker Queen, so hey, that could work. She got an extra 25 health. I don't think that matters. I don't think that meta's coming back in the short time, but it maybe could with Reinhardt, who I think is more attractive than Junker Queen right now. Mercy is gutted. Mercy is gutted. This is not good. It destroys Pharmacy. It makes the hero, it doesn't destroy Pharmacy, but it certainly makes Pharmacy quite a bit worse. It makes Mercy quite a bit worse. It makes Mercy helping, I suppose, another hero like a Sojourn, like less worse than some of the other nerfs, but it's just not good. And I would be unhappy if I was a Mercy player, and I would be unhappy to see a Mercy on my team right now. That's just the truth. And this is a big portion of the player base, so doing this is a little scary to your bottom line. But hey, and then I think these are fine. So overall, I'm looking at this, and it's certainly an interesting patch. It certainly gives me some insight, I believe, into the direction that Blizzard is going. And I like the tank shakeup that we see. I like the ult directions that they're going. I think. It could be that Wrecking Ball is just an unstoppable monster, which I'm okay with personally, but isn't really good for the game. But what do you guys think? Let me do some catch up on chat here, because that's kind of my thing. If you're looking for heroes to explore as of this patch, I would definitely tinker with Wrecking Ball. I'd definitely tinker with Reinhardt. I'd tinker with heroes that complement them. Bap with Reinhardt. I might check out, hey, how does our Tracer Sombra Echo stuff work if Wrecking Ball is usable again? Wait, do we have a support line that makes sense? Does our Lucio Brig support line make sense? Does it make sense with Wrecking Ball? Does it make sense with Reinhardt? Does it make sense with Ramatra? Okay, no. So do we bring the Kiriko back into the Brig spot, or are we in a situation where, what are we looking at here? I think there's some experimenting, and those are the directions that I would want to first poke at if I was like, okay, what do I want to do with my time on ladder or with my first two scrim blocks, etc. No, well, I mean, at some point, Temporal will die, but not in the immediate future. I just have a cough. They're very good at just letting people be OP forever. It'll probably last like 2 months. That would be about right. I would expect most of this to last like 2 months. If Ball is broken powerful, which is possible, he may see a mid-season adjustment, not as big as most people would like, or maybe they'll dumpster him. I don't know. It could be like the hog treatment, where he's too powerful for too long, and then finally they dumpster him. Or it could be like Sojourn, where you get nerfed, and then we just sort of leave you, and people don't really like it. I don't think GA cooldown lasts 3 weeks. I think you're right. I think that is like borderline, not actually going to cause riots, but it is going to cause the digital equivalent of riots. Uh, and that's bad for them. And that is bad for the health of Overwatch because the problem is the Mercy Mains are correctly going to come out and complain very loud. They are a very loud and very dedicated force in the Overwatch world digitally in terms of their footprint, be it on BattleNet forums, Twitter, Reddit, whatever, talking to each other, getting, something published on one of those dying video game journalism websites. They're going to be a effective force for that. But unfortunately, they also have a backlash of people who go, well, your hero takes no skill, well, this, well, that, well, we don't like your hero, well, blah, 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 well, you guys are always complaining, and that's also going to bring some of the bad things to the front, which, makes it easier to publish those articles, etc., and that's not particularly good for Overwatch. Large portions of the Mercy community, if they were to leave, that's not good for the health of Overwatch because, hey, it's a less relevant game, less people playing it, etc., less money coming in for Blizzard for them to try to make the game better. This could be a disaster, quite frankly. Fixing it is better than not fixing it, but fixing it is, what it's going to take to get to the point of fixing it because Blizzard very rarely thinks they're wrong on things is going to be damaging. Ball will be too strong. I hope so. Is Ballbrig Zen back? I don't think so, and the reason I don't think that's true is Brig is still not a better peeler than Lucio. It's possible because that 25% instant, or not 25%, but that 25 instant health does leave you in a situation where it's like, okay, throwing the repair pack on your Tracer or on your Echo or on your Sombra while still being able to stay with your Zen has some solid value there. Can't really complain about that. And it's like a little bit more powerful on your Tracer that you can throw them that repair pack. Whereas Lucio having to go over there was harder. That's sort of like the only real use case I can see. And yes, that could be a Brig Zen Ball type situation. But Lucio is in most ways a better peeling hero. Like Lucio is just a better peeling hero, and in a world where you're worried about, let me put it this way. If Winston jumps or Wrecking Ball jumps on your Briggs and backline, I don't think you can fend them off effectively enough. Like, I really don't. Whereas old Brig could, modern Brig, even with this change, she's been changed to be better at supporting her diving Wrecking Ball, her diving Tracer, but she can't fend stuff off well enough, whereas Lucio actually kind of can, because he can speed up the counter rotation, he can boop away the dive coming in, not as well, can't peel as well as old Brig could, Overwatch 1 Brig, but I have my doubts. Maybe we see Brig Zen specifically because, hey, it's got pretty good power. But if so, our Zen Brigs are going to have to get even better at staying away, at being hard to rotate on, etc., to a level that most of them certainly don't have right now. Expect another meaningless Kotaku article? I mean, they desperately need the clicks. They are hurting right now. All digital advertised-based media is hurting right now, and they will probably fall in the recession as there's not enough venture capital to prop them up. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't really know that it's never been a good business model to, for like 10 or 12 years, hate your audience that you want to read your whatever. That's a different rant, but that's one of the things that happens in a recession. Some of these things that really haven't been good business models and like honestly probably should have failed a decade ago will fail. But then we get into, we're talking economics and we're not talking Overwatch anymore. What would be good ball counters? I mean, Sombra obviously works as a ball counter. Torb works as a ball counter. Torb got a little bit nerfed here. Sombra got a little bit buffed here. Sombra is the hardest ball counter, of course, and that's valid. If balls are getting really uncontrollable, we may just see more of that. Ball Brig Zen might actually be strong. It might. It might. Guardian Angel was ridiculous. It's the healing nerf that goes way too far, in my opinion. It doesn't matter if Guardian Angel was ridiculous or not. That's way too much of Mercy's power that you're taking away. Taking her Guardian Angel from 1.5 seconds to 2.5 seconds is like it goes from, it might still seem like extremely abusive mobility on a 2.5 second cooldown, but Tracers and Winstons and such are going to yawn at killing Mercies that after you put a little pressure on them to make them Guardian Angel once, now they have to wait 2.5 seconds. After being used to the 1.5 second world, it is going to be cake to take down Mercies. Unless you're giving her a ton of value elsewhere. Like, are you giving her a ton of value to her maybe not to her survivability, but to something elsewhere where you're like, hey, now her damage boost is 40%? Sure. If her damage boost is 40%, you can knock her Guardian Angel from 1.5 to 2.5 seconds, and she's going to be a different hero, but that could potentially work. But what they gave in exchange is garbage. Top Post has decimated the real issue of Mercy. YouTube doesn't like it when you say that. Yeah, that was always going to happen. Just tired of a hero that takes such minimal effort to play, being in all your games tied to a Sojourn, so nerf Sojourn. Or fundamentally change Mercy. But this isn't a fundamental change to Mercy. This is a nerf and a major one to Mercy. Like, they're trying to change, but if you're going to do this change, you have to compensate buffs somewhere else. You have to, in a much bigger way than they did. Because, you know, you can change Mercy because you can say, hey, I want more skill expression, I want more this on Mercy. That's fine. You can potentially do that. There are ways to do that. It will drive some of the audience off, but there are ways to do that if that's what you really want from Mercy. But Mercy isn't a particularly good. I know she sees a lot of ladder play tied to Sojourns right now, but she's not actually that good, that powerful of a support, and this is heavily nerfing her. What you wanted to do was you wanted to give her buffs that required a lot of skill expression to tap into, or give her nerfs and give her powerful buffs at the same time that required a lot of skill expression to tap into. That's what you wanted to do, you know, nerf some of the easier to drive aspects in exchange for buffing some more skill expression type stuff, and that's not what was done here. She was net nerfed hard in this patch. And that's not going to be good for Overwatch. It's not going to be good for Overwatch. It's not going to be good for Overwatch's image. It is going to draw lots of complaints, like the one Semitic said. It's going to draw a lot of people backlash against those complaints because some of those complaints are going to be in bad faith, like the one that Semitic is putting there. And then those bad faith complaints will get attacked, but attacking those bad faith complaints will make people look like terrible people, will make the community look terrible. It is a mess. They said we're not in a recession because salaries are up 4% and inflation is up 7%. Yes, blah, you got it. Jobs are a lot higher than we thought they'd be, specifically for fast food and other things like that. They're not even staying up there. That's lagging data, but yeah. It's also taking away fun, right? I think it's time to delete the game is Mercy boosted 40%. That's what I'm pointing out though, Blah. Like, we can say 40% damage boost would be terrible for the game. I'm fine with that. I'm not seriously suggesting giving her 40% damage boost, but the point that I'm making is, like, she has extreme survivability with Guardian Angel and Super Jump right now, and if you're going to hugely nerf that extreme survivability, you have to either give her extreme healing, you have to give her like extreme healing. You have to give her better damage boost, or you have to give her a new ability entirely. That, you know, something that maybe when she is damage boosting people or when she's healing people, those people temporarily have, you know, people that she's tethered to temporarily have infocytes, for example. Like, oh, okay, well, if you're doing that, sure, you can nerf Guardian Angel. That would also be very broken, but, like, that's an example of you have to compensate if you're going to nerf something. Like, what Mercy is good at is survivability right now. Suspect the metal rank Mercies will heal bot even harder? Well, that's usually what happens. You always have to train. You frequently have to train people in metal ranks to sort of go, no, if you're feeling like you have to heal too much, the trick is to actually get more damage done, more pressure on the enemy earlier in the fight before your team is lower on health. Balanced team is a room full of 6-year-olds right now. They're just lost. They don't know how to do it. They lost too much talent. And you can understand why, because Blizzard isn't a terribly prestigious place to work at right now. People who could get out did get out. Some of the policies that we're seeing out of them, like, if you leave Blizzard for another job and then come back, we're putting you back at your old salary rate, which is like, okay, well, so you're broadcasting to the world that no talent should ever that people shouldn't try to go to you because you're not going to compensate them. Like, if you worked for Blizzard as a QA tester at the beginning of your career and you leave and go do other things, and then you come back at a level with more serious skills where people actually want to recruit you, poach you into Blizzard, etc., and the guy who wants to poach you to work for him can't actually hire you because, of course, you're not going to take the QA level salary again. Like, that's just, you're broadcasting to the world, we don't want talent. You're broadcasting bad stuff to, the world in terms of the allegations that they've dealt with, and then people are going to believe that anyone who's left there didn't have better options, so they're not going to be surrounded by terribly effective talent at that point. And you don't want to work in a place where you're not surrounded by good talent, because it's bad for your networking. It's likely that you'll get more work put on you than you should because the other people can't do it, etc. Okay. In Overwatch 1, you could hit Diamond on Mercy just heal butting. Now you can probably hit Masters just heal butting on Mercy since the ranks are inflated. Who knows? Who knows? Uh-huh. They don't play the game. We know one of them does, but yeah. Short-term business thinking. The balance team made it into HR for company policies. You win. You win, blah. Okay, I think that covers what we needed to. I'll do a quick scroll through to see if there was anything interesting I missed earlier in chat. Don't fix Sojourn by buffing more Hitscan. I agree. YouTube stream. Yeah, Gamebuster. Happy to have it. Yeah, glad you enjoyed it, Joe. Okay. Uh, then I think we are good to go. I'm looking forward to see how this patch goes. Make sure you guys leave comments about your findings. Is Wrecking Ball a monster now? Is Mercy absolutely decimated? Leave your comments down below once you've done a little exploring.